What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's TV review of the Apple TV Plus original series, The Afterparty Season 2. This, of course, will follow Episode 5, which is titled Sebastian, and is directed by, of course, Christopher Miller. Okay, so... at this point, I'm just saying it right now. This is like the best TV series I've seen this year. This series just continues to astound me and amaze me and just completely make me happy every time I watch an episode. There is something truly unique and special about this series, especially in season 2, that even I was a little skeptical about. I mean, honestly, a season 2 is never really that good, but here we are. We're halfway through the season. We finally get Sebastian's story, and yeah, it's another winner. It's another 9.5 out of 10. I guarantee you this whole season is gonna be a 9.5 out of 10, and it's wonderful. It's an Ocean's 11 style episode. It deals with Sebastian, who is played by Jack Whitehall, and he absolutely delivers. He's charismatic. He's energetic. He has like one of the great twists in this series of like who he is and where he comes from. And I think it was smart to make it an Ocean's 11 style, because he seems like that kind of guy that would be a schemer in a lot of respects, or somebody that would like rappel off the roof or something like that. That's the kind of character that Jack Whitehall portrays in this episode. And it plays to his strengths, you know. It's a really fascinating thing to see that Sebastian was an individual that was actually trying to prevent the fall of his company, Bacillus, you know, or I think it was Bacillus or something like that. And it's looking more and more like Edgar's just not a very nice individual, not a very likable individual. And that's kind of fascinating, because he comes off in the first episode as very likable, but very weird and kind of strange, but one of those individuals that really cares. But it's seeming more and more like that Edgar was doing some things that weren't very kosher in a lot of respects, with the crypto stuff, the way he was running his company, the way he was treating his people. It feels like he cared more about his company making a lot of money on kind of the quick end than it was the long term. And it really shows here. Now, once again, this is the idea of the after party, is stories being told from the ideologies and minds of the people around them. So there could be things that are made up that we don't know about, as we see from Hannah and Grace at the end of this episode. That's very much true. And it really kind of opens up this idea of like, what exactly did Edgar do to get himself killed? And is Edgar actually dead? That's the question that opens up every episode to me personally. Is Edgar really dead? Did he plot with someone? Or is this a story of somebody who got truly screwed over, which is what it's sounding like, by Edgar, and somebody truly had a motive? And I find that really fascinating. Here, Sebastian comes clean that he's an individual from California. He's not actually British. He's American. He grew up in a trailer park, and he was very good, like Danny Ocean or any of the characters in the, of course, Ocean's 11 series, of conning people, of using his cousins to con people. And we see it from a very early age. I love it. You know, they steal a bunch of baseball cards from this shopkeep, and it's just really, really funny to watch, because it's very much what you would think a Sebastian character story would be. But in the process of everything, he decides, because he doesn't want to live a poor lifestyle, he basically cons himself into the world of the very posh and rich at this school, where he meets Edgar. And the one thing that hasn't been said by me, and something that's been pointed out, is how good the children actors are in this series. The people that are portraying the younger versions of these main characters are absolutely delightful to watch. The two young kids who end up playing Sebastian and Edgar comes off, you know, as a young kid, even like snobbish and just kind of thinks he's better than everyone. And there are people that are like that, because he comes from a very rich family. There's like a connection that Sebastian and Edgar meet at a very young age, and it really is portrayed well. There's great chemistry between the kids and how they play off each other, and I just kind of love what they do. And then Sebastian, who thinks he's going to get the better of it, decides he's going to throw this baseball card with this misprint that says Turder. It's supposed to be like Truder or something like that, but it says Turder. And if you look at the card, it actually is Zach Woods in a baseball player uniform, and like an old school like early 1900s baseball card. And I thought that was very, very funny, because I don't know if it's something that is supposed to give you a hint to maybe something of Edgar and his like world or whatever. But if it's not, if it's just thrown there as an inside joke, it's a pretty funny one, to be fairly honest, because it really does look like Zach Woods. But if you don't pay attention to it, you will never know. So it's if you look at it, go back and watch it, it is Zach Woods in a baseball uniform from like the 1900s. So I thought that was very, very funny. Maybe that'll lead to something, but I don't think it will. But of course, instead of playing chess, which what most of these movies that this episode is based off would do, they decide they're going to play Connect 4. Now, that's very much a funny joke, because the idea of like a young kid who's not very rich or very, he doesn't come off the smartest in the world, would want to play Connect Four to try and beat the rich, snobbish kid, is very funny because it feels like a very childlike thing to do. I've grown up and I've been around people that are they do a nice job at chess. They're very good at it. But to go to Connect Four is something that I would recommend and probably still get beat at. But, it's one of those things where the kid's mind doesn't really think about it. But of course, Edgar beats him every time. He knows how to play Edgar. He knows how to do, or he knows how to play Sebastian and knows how to beat him and stuff like that. And he loses his Turner card to Edgar, which is actually an interesting point because they become friends, but Edgar always has this stigma that he kind of holds over Sebastian as an individual. And Sebastian kind of shows that he is very smart and very capable, savvy businessman. So when it goes into the later parts of the episode, the idea of Sebastian trying to keep Edgar from losing all of his company's money, which they've been partners with, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if it's truthful and it's actually telling the truth of what we see, it would make a lot of sense why Sebastian would want to keep some money not hidden aside, but hedge their bets, because cryptocurrency is very volatile, as we've seen. Crypto dropped a lot in the last few years before it became a huge thing, but Edgar doesn't like this, which is very fascinating. Not really that surprising with the kind of how his mentality thinks. And he actually asked for the resignation of Sebastian, which is very kind of telling about why Sebastian could be the killer, because Sebastian put all his life's effort into this company that Edgar just seems to not want to care about. He's more worried about the in the minute situation, the in a minute go to rich scheme. And you see it with Travis's character, and you see it with Grace and how he treats Grace and how he treats Hannah and how he treats his family, and just everything about Edgar just comes off very slimy. So Sebastian, of course, his two cousins who are in jail, he actually brings out of jail to con this big scheme or this big heist to break into the vault, which we think he's going to steal all the cryptocurrency and stuff like that. I like the idea of the two cousins are kind of idiots, but they're good at what they do, so it's understandable about what they do. But the best part about that segment about him going to see his two cousins who are in jail for whatever reason, it doesn't even really matter, is the fact that Ben Schwartz pops up. And it's a really cool misdirect because it's played off like Sebastian knows Jasper's character. And of course, Jasper, spoiler alert, he was the killer in the end of the first season. But Jasper is doing what Jasper does, which he still thinks he's going to create the next gold record or whatever. And it's really kind of a nice little kind of misdirect in the thing Sebastian's going to be talking to him. But he just moves past Jasper. It's just a nice little kind of homage or Easter egg to the first season if you haven't seen it, to go back and watch it, because it's really kind of a fun thing. But instead he goes to his cousins, and I just love that scene between Jasper and his lawyer. His lawyer's like, I'm just your lawyer, I don't really care about your singing. And Ben Schwartz is a very funny guy. I really think he's really hysterical in the scene that he's in. I really appreciate that Christopher Miller and the writing crew, the Shipley brothers and stuff like that, brought him back. But it's just a fun scene. It doesn't really add anything to the episode, but it's just a fun thing to call back to the first season. But basically all this is happening, and it's basically an Ocean's 11 style. They're going to concoct that where even though Sebastian's been fired, he's still the best man of Edgar. He's going to go in, distract Edgar, and break into the vault. He needs to figure out what the vault's combination is. He figures out that in order to do that, he needs to seduce Hannah or Isabella, and we saw how that goes in the earlier episodes. But he uses his cousins to play. One's going to play a DJ who's going to distract, of course, Grace and Edgar. The other one's going to be a waiter, so that they can concoct themselves to keep Edgar out of the safe, the room, his office. And I really love this stuff because it really shows you kind of what Sebastian's view and what he was doing and how it plays into the bigger whole of everything we've seen. So the naked man that we see running in the first episode and that they mistake for being Anik is Sebastian, who is trying to seduce Isabella to get the combination for that little revolving combination key. And she has a big samurai sword, which plays into her fascination with samurais. She doesn't allow him to get his clothes. He of course is chased by the dog, and all the security lights is really, really funny. The reason he had the cups of champagne is because he was trying to seduce Hannah, but that didn't go very well. And the reason for the instance when Edgar asked Sebastian to go get Anik to basically do the bow tie thing is because Sebastian or Edgar doesn't trust Sebastian. So he, once again, there's a sequence between, of course, Travis and Sebastian where which they have this like back and forth. They figure out the Pacifilis thing, but in the process, Sebastian, in a Ocean's 11 style world, has a pen with a camera on it, so he can keep track and pinpoint all the security key points for Edgar's lock. And then, of course, he kidnaps he uses his cousin to kidnap the lizard, which is why the lizard disappears off of Neeks. There's so much revelation and so much kind of wrapping up of the different things that have been kind of going on in the last 5 episodes, that even though it can be really confusing, they do a nice job of like completing this portion, they're completing this portion, doing this, doing this, doing this. And they also open up some interesting new revelations. They open up the idea of like Sebastian was going to go to, when they went to the after party itself, he notices Ulysses behind the counter doing something that we can't see, which will be opened up when Ulysses' episode happens in like, I think episode 8 or something like that. But that happens. And then of course the idea of like, Sebastian going up to, of course, the room, he breaks it in, he uses lizard. He, Isabella during the wedding ceremony tells him that the horse's name was Nutmeg, which leads to the combination. He breaks into the safe, but in the process, the scene we saw earlier where Edgar says he has to leave because he has to take care of something when he's in the middle of the dance. Well, we find out that Sebastian set off an alarm, which triggered Edgar to go up there. We find out that, of course, Travis was knocked over the head by one of Sebastian's cousins, which knocked him out, which, would lead into like trying to, keep the person at bay. And then, of course, it all culminates to, of course, Sebastian and Edgar having a match of Connect 4. So in the process, Sebastian wasn't really caring about the cryptocurrency. He just wanted the card because that was very important to him and felt like was the defining point to their friendship, to Edgar and Sebastian's friendship, which I found really fascinating because the one thing that you find out about friendships is it never really is, or it shouldn't be about the idea of like, him wanting the cryptocurrency or whatever. Edgar or Sebastian was always smart enough to, and you see it through the end of the last episode, he was smart enough to kind of use his way to get himself rich. So he's not even really worried about it. The card has sentimental value, which is more important to him than, Edgar ever was. So therefore they play Connect 4 for the card. And of course, Edgar wins. Of course, Sebastian does the misdirection with dropping the chip. He actually switches out the card. And we don't see that at first, but he switches out the card, which is actually the non-misprint card. And Edgar, takes 20% of the card as a kind of FU to, of course, Sebastian. And it's just kind of a nice, payoff to some of these story threads that have been going on because, as this series needs to move along, or as it moves along, it needs to clear up some of these things that you've been kind of wondering about, and it does it halfway through the season. It leads all into the simple fact that, like, Sebastian is just another individual that is playing people for, his gain. But I think it's very, very funny, the kind of, he talks about the card, and it's only worth 6 figures. And now you and me, if you're not very rich or you don't have a lot of money, 6 figures is a lot of money. So it just shows you that Sebastian lives in a different world of most of these people. And like Anik and of course Danner's like response when he says it's only worth 6 figures, not really that important, it's more sentimental. It's really, really funny. I think it's one of the funniest moments in the episode. But I mean, it leads Sebastian to go off and say, I didn't do it. There is a moment where, he goes to pick up his cousins and he ends up picking up the bride's family, which leads into that thread about why Anik like missed the family and stuff like that, which I thought was really funny. That's kind of where it leads off with Sebastian, but there's also the running theme of like Zoe trying to figure out what the real problem is, or the real kind of who killed him. And it leads Isabella's one of those characters that hasn't had a lot of development, but she's just there as an individual who could be the killer, could not be the killer. She's accusing people of being the killer. There's a scene where Fang and Vivian are up in the room and they have all the Devil's Trumpet planters, which Hannah had put together. And Isabella tries to accuse them of killing their son. And there's a scene at the very beginning, which is really funny, where Isabella accuses the family of Zoe and Grace, and then they accuse them once and back and forth, and so on and so forth. And, it basically leads to Vivian being a hoarder. Sebastian hears her saying that she has a problem, and so on and so forth. And it leads to the simple fact that, Vivian is a hoarder or a klepto, or a cheapskate in a lot of respects. So they're keeping all the plans to like use for later on, which is a really funny joke. Depends on how you feel about that joke, but it is actually quite funny if you think about it, because it's another misdirect. It's another Isabella kind of being a little bit racist, to be fairly honest. But I think Elizabeth Perkins plays it very, very well. And I think, the rest of the characters are played off very, very well. But it also leads to, in the process of everything, the SEC 4 paper was a scorecard for for Sebastian, Edgar, Connect 4, which is a really kind of neat thing to think about. I love that little reveal that the paper has nothing to do with like what Travis was talking about. It's just, it was the thing that connected Sebastian and Edgar, which I think is a lot of fun. But it leads to the ending of this episode, which really opens up where the next episode is not even going to be about one of these characters that are being suspects of the show. It's actually about Danner and how she got to the point where she is now. And I think they did that last season too, where they had Danner have her own episode halfway through. I don't necessarily know if it's going to work, but I mean, I still think that it could be effective for this series, or at least this season. But it's going to be interesting to see that episode and if it has any kind of semblance to what goes on in this episode. But with that said, the very end of this episode is basically Hannah is putting all the bleach or whatever you put into the pool. It puts a whole bottle in there and says, do your job. And there's like dead bees and stuff like that, which is really interesting. Oh, there's also a point which I found interesting is if you look at the horse painting, it looks like there's a camera or a sensor in the painting. So I think that's going to be something that plays in. It was very much like the first season where the camera system or some system was something that people forgot about or didn't see, which actually helped see who was the killer in a lot of respects. So I think that horse painting is going to come into effect later on. I don't know for that for a fact, but that's just what I believe. But Hannah comes across Grace, who comes up to her, and we find out that, Hannah told them everything. Of course, Grace knows this, but there's more to it than what she told them, and Zoe sees this, and that's the end of the episode. Now, with that said, what does that mean? I still think it means they were going to run away. I still think there's some scheming with somebody. It would be really interesting if Ulysses, Grace, and Hannah were contriving a plot that went wrong, or they were contriving a plot that was meant to ruin Zach Wood's character. Maybe Grace was involved in some scheme. I mean, I don't know. This could be like a Murder of the Orient Express situation where everybody was involved outside of Anik. I don't know, but it's really interesting that they bring up, they solve all these twists and threads, and then they bring up two new ones with Ulysses, and they bring up the whole idea of like, what is Grace and Hannah's thing now? And I'll be really interested to see as we move along whether they, whether it's just kind of they're still in love with one another. They're afraid to say something, or they're really scheming with somebody, and it kind of went sideways. And it'll be interesting to see it play out. But Zoe sees it, and it kind of leads open to like what is going on. And it'll be a really interesting thing to see. So with that said, that is the episode. I really loved it. I love the idea of the Ocean's 11 style feel. I love the idea of like, the revelations that, are finally tied up that we understand. They're not big revelations, but they're just enough to kind of keep the story fresh and moving on to different things. And, it's once again just a home run of an episode. It's fun. It's entertaining. Jack Whitehall delivers on all fronts. And every character in this episode has their moment, as they usually do, and I just love it. I love everything about it. Once again, I'll give it a 9.5 out of 10. It's my score. It just continues to deliver on every front. So with that said, that'll do it. That'll be my take on season 2, episode 5, which of course is Sebastian, halfway through the series. So we're getting very, very close to the end to find out who really killed him, which I'll be interested to see who did it. I'm still excited. I don't know. I haven't watched the next 5 episodes, so we'll see. But yeah. There you go. That's my take. With that said, thank you so much for watching. That'll do it. Comments below. Let me know what you think of this episode. What is your feeling on who did it? Where do you think the story's headed? What do you think about the revelations, the kind of the wrap up of some story threads, all that good stuff. But let me know. Anyways, with that said, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell, top the fun's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.